All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I guess I'm already past time, so I will just get started. And it seems like there's already questions pending for me in the chat. All right, so we'll start with, do you think presenting a use cap abstract for a poster presentation is doable in the first year? So, use cap abstracts are actually due in September of the fall before the conference, late September, basically early August in that sense. And then it's possible for first years to go. You will have to be very proactive the minute you get to residency and find someone who is doing a project and just help out with it. Starting from original project at this time, it might be a little too hard and you might not have enough time to you know, finish a project in time. The other thing you can do is if you are staying at your own home institution, you can go to the pathology department early, be like, hey, I'm so excited I matched here. And do you have a project for me to start before I go so I could go to USCAP? So those are your two basic ways of getting a USCAP submission ready in time for USCAP. And then, did I ever get dizzy while scanning cytology slides? So, scanning cytology slides is no different than looking at the H&E slides. So, if you have no issues with if you have no issues with the H&E slides, then I wouldn't imagine you have issues with cytology slides. The only thing is that cytology slides are stained with different things, like the papillon call stain and then so on and so forth. Okay. Oh, okay. I have more questions. But how about I start with the thing I promised everyone, the teaser I gave everyone to join me today for this live cast. So I am going to tell you guys kind of about my salary. And since I released my salary video, which was quite a long time ago, back in the early fall, I think, my salary has increased since I started, and it came in like in the middle of the fall. I was told that everyone in the department was getting a salary boost. So my now base salary is $244,000. And that is almost a $20,000 jump from what I was being paid before. So that's like a really good, makes it a little better. And then in terms, so I'm just going to read off this sheet for you guys. This is one of my paychecks. So my base salary is 244, and the salary I earn so I get two paychecks every month. One gets paid out on like the 7th, and another one get paid out on the 21st or something, some close range to that. So I'm getting paid one cycle behind. And so basically I'm being paid for about 2 weeks. And my salary for half of a month, gross salary, is $10,166.67. And that supposedly accounts for 424 hours worked. And I think that when you break that down, I don't even know. That seems like a lot of hours for half a month period. I don't know how that breaks down. And then, so in addition to that, I get a cell phone stipend every month of $12.50 because we don't use pagers anymore, but we still use the paging system. So I now have Spock mobiles assigned to my personal cell phone in which people can page the Spock mobile, and that is now my pager and my go-to communication for all work things. And then the last one is HS Seed, and that's $40. I don't know what that is. Yeah, I really don't know what that is. But anyway, so those are like the total of things sorry. 424 hours is how many hours I've worked this year since the beginning of whatever. Yeah. And then basically, so then it's saying something, my total earnings for this half a month period is $10,179.17. And now comes all of the withholdings and why my take home salary gets cut basically in half. So, federal withholdings, I am out of my current paycheck getting $1,545 taken for federal. Federal MD, which I think is Medicare, Medicaid, is $144. And then federal OASDI, I don't even know what tax that is. That is $619. And then California voluntary disable. Oh, I guess I pay $90 a month pre-tax for my disability insurance, I guess, through the university. And the California withholdings is $677. So all of that takes away 3,000, and that all of that together takes out $3,077 of my total paycheck. Okay, I'm trying to keep this all in track. Okay. And then deductions, more deductions. So that was my taxes on my salary because of the government taxes and the state taxes. Now it's the deductions that include my 40 403b, the my retirement plan. So I basically, my goal is every year to fill out the max limit on that retirement plan. I think it's around 20 something $1,000 a year. So whatever that is, I just set it to fill it for the rest of the year, and they take it to basically take that number, divide by 12, and that's how much they take from my paycheck every time. So for my retirement, they take away $1,830 a month. And then for my health HSA account, so I have a high deductible health insurance plan. So with that, I get an HSA, so it's better than the FSA because the HSA, you can like put money in it and invest it, and it's tax-free money going in and tax-free money coming out. So it's kind of like it's like the best kind of money. So there's a limit, I think, for $5,000 in a given year for a single person. So that's $131 a month. And then I also pay uh, $25 every half a $131 every half a month, and then $25 every half a month for my healthcare and all that, and then 13 for dental and 560 for whatever. So that all of that total takes out another 2,500 $2,005 from my total paycheck. And then so once again, so my total gross is 10,179, and the thing I get to take home is the grand total of $5,091. So basically, like I said, it's all here. If you guys want to freeze frame it or something, whatever. But that's how much I take. So whatever my monthly or my biweekly biweekly paycheck is, I lose half of it for taxes because California taxes are ridiculous. And now that I am a physician and I earn so much money, now my federal state taxes as outrageous, and I contribute to retirement so that I'm like don't have to work till I'm dead. And yeah, so basically, gross salary divided by half is my take home. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's what I promised you guys. So let me get back to the questions. Okay. Next question. How can we increase our chances to match into pathology with average? Um, so I guess I'll address that question two ways. I'll first address with the average USMLE, and then I'll address the old year of graduation. So average USMLE is totally fine. Pathology is not one of those specialties where you have to be like 260, 270 to be competitive. There are applicants like that. I've seen applications with that kind of numbers. And the funny part is I saw those numbers, and internally I was like, why didn't they apply for ortho or plastics? They could like go anywhere with that with that score, but that just says they're smart people, good test takers coming to pathology too. And but that's like the outliers, and on average it's like 230, 240, 220, that kind of range. And that's pretty average. And we don't have an issue with that. For us, it's more like if you could pass these USMLEs, it means that you're okay at test taking and you'll probably pass the boards because whatever you do on your USMLE have nothing to do with pathology. We couldn't care less if you like, you know, I don't know. If you got 270 something, it means nothing about how you're going to learn and practice pathology. And in terms of old year of graduation, that would come down to how old year of a graduation. Say you graduated the last 1, 2, 3 years and you didn't know what you wanted to do and you were just doing different internships and finally you're like, you know what, surgery is not for me, whatever is not for me, I want to go into pathology. And that's not really a huge issue long as you haven't tried applying all 3 years into pathology and you couldn't get it. Um, but it's basically the longer you are away from graduation, I say for like 1 year, 2 years, probably the best. You should have three, okay, four, five, six, seven, and so on. Those are kind of hard to have like a match to a nice program. There is so many pathology departments in small hospital, royal hospitals, and I'm sure if they need to match, they will match you. Because I think even pathology, if you look at the match results, I think even last year there was still unmatched spots. So yeah, that means I don't know what that means. That means that people interviewed a bunch at those locations and decided I don't want to do this. This is like not my way of living or something along those lines. Okay, next question. In my experience, does the letter of intent play any role in ranking applicants? Yes. And no. So when I say yes, is because if the letter of intent is to say the letter of, um, I forgot what the term is, the letter that say you're going to rank this program number one, that may help you in your ranked to match list because a lot of programs, especially top name programs, they don't want to go like unmatched or they don't want to like say I went too far down on my rank list or God forbid they don't want to say I had to do the scramble to have my full match for my list. So the letter of basically saying you're not my number one pick, I'm definitely ranking you my number one, that might help you get moved up the list if the program director and the search committee believes that is a worthwhile endeavor because like I said, they don't want to go unmatched and they don't want to go down too far down the list and so on and so forth. In terms of letter of oh, that is what a letter of intent is. Oh my god, I'm sorry. I was thinking letter of interest. Letter of interest, those letters are like it's kind of like iffy kind of thing. Like I know I've recommended if you have a letter of interest, you could send them to your number 2 and number 3 places. But usually if a program receives those letters, it'll be like, oh, whatever, this person might have sent it to every institution. But whereas a letter of intent saying, I will match, no, I ranked you number one. If you rank me to match, I will come here for sure. That letter has way more play than a letter of interest. Um, but not that great. I mean, like if you were ranked on the bottom of their rank list, so say they interviewed 80 people and you are number 80, it's not gonna, pop you up to like say number 20. It's not gonna be like that, but they may raise you up a little bit more. Or if you were one of those like, I really like them, but there's some applicants who are just so great, I'm gonna have to list them up and you give a letter of intent. They're like, you know what? We would be happy having you. Maybe they'll move you up a little bit more. But I really don't think there's ever going to be a case where you send a letter. Okay, I can't say never. Never. I can never say never. But letters of intent usually either does nothing for your chances or it increases your chances to some degree. Next question. How early do I know I want to specialize in GI? And how early did your co-residents know? Okay. So, in terms of GI, I knew coming into residency that I was only interested in AP. I did the CP because everyone said you have to do both a APCP if you want to be marketable in the job search. But going in, I knew I only want to do AP because I like did as a med student rotated through CP, and it was like, what am I doing? I'm doing something now that I did in microbiology lab in college. So yeah. And then in terms of how I picked GI, I actually knew pretty early on because when I did my rotations in the pathology, I did total of 2.5 months of pathology rotations um, coming into the interview process. And I already know by then I really enjoy pathology, like the GI pathology, because, like I said, I think colon is really pretty, poop looks really pretty. And I don't know, it just clicked with me really easily. And the other thing I knew I was interested was possibly forensics pathology because I really, this is going to sound so weird. I really enjoy doing autopsies. I feel like in this right conditions, they are very, very meaningful and very helpful for the purpose of an autopsy. Of course, there's those the stupid autopsies where like the family's like, oh my god, I can't believe they died. You do autopsies? All right, do it one. And those autopsies reveal nothing more than what all the lab testing and all of the other medicine critical care people already knew about the patient. Um, so yeah, I knew I wanted to do GI or forensics because I like autopsies, and then I did my forensic rotation in my second year, and I was like, no, if I did forensics, I'm gonna go into depression and never come out of it. So I was like, then GI it is. And then the more I did it, the more I liked it. So I guess that's a sign. If you think you want to do something, just try to cram as much of it in as you can in your first 2 years. And then if you get eventually get sick of it, then that's not going to be what you want to subspecialize in. For me, I thought like, colon polyps were great. They were super easy. Everyone finds colon polyps super easy. But then once you start going to like the hard benign colon stuff, because I think out of all of the organ systems, maybe other than dermpath, I think like GI has the most abundance of benign entities we can make a diagnosis for. And then so on, I like the cancers and so on and so forth. And yeah, I did my fellowship and now I'm doing my work, and it's really tiring and it's a really brain drain at the end of the day. But the next day I'm like excited. It's like, ooh, what cool thing I'm gonna see today. So yeah, that's I hope you when you go to a specialty and you get that kind of feeling, then that's probably it for you. Um Oh, okay. I skipped too many. I found out my channel. Appreciate all the information as a current. Oh, well, it's been pretty difficult. Okay. Well, congratulations on finding pathology as a college freshman. um, I'm glad if it gives you inspiration, then you kind of know how to move through the next 8 years of your life to get to here. So congrats for liking and finding my channel. What advice do I have for what advice do you have on doing well during an away rotation as a USMD? How do I know I'm a competitive applicant for the well-known program in a major city? Okay. How do you do well in an OA rotation? It's the same how you do well at your home institution rotation, assuming you had one. The whole idea is you want to come and you want to come looking like excited and interested every day, even if you're like, like these hours are kind of like tiring. Honestly, pathology hours not that tiring for as a med student, but you always want to come in. You always want to show that you're enthusiastic to learn, and if you find yourself having downtime, it's you could try asking, be like, oh, is there any sign out or any other thing I could participate in right now, because I have nothing currently in this time period. So basically you just want to go and show your interest. And if this away rotation is at the program you absolutely want to go to, then you need to put like your best manner up front, even if it's not the way you normally would act, but you want to make it that you are very personable, you get along with the other residents, and the attendings don't find you awkward or find it weird to teach you for anyways, because when you do a away rotation, it's kind of like an informal interview in a sense. If you spend a month in an away rotation and the residents loved you, the attendees who worked with you loved you, then I'm sure you're going to be ranked to match. But if you go through the month and say on the last 3 days you just like let it all go and end up with a sour note, then that might actually hurt your chances. But just try to get along with the residents, try to get along with attendings, and try to get along with the support staffs. And then so when it comes down to looking at your application, even if your application is not that competitive, but they know that you have an earnest interest in pathology, you get along well with everyone in the program, and that just boosts you up a lot. Um, and yeah, so I mean, well-known programs in major cities. In terms of that, honestly, like I said, pathology isn't super competitive. If you want to go to, say, Johns Hopkins or Brigham and Women or Mass General for residency, not Mass General, MGH for residency, then you kind of need to have higher on the higher end scores. You kind of need some pathology research, or not even pathology research. I have done shown interest that you've done either clinical or bench research to some degree because those programs really like it. And then make sure your not just your first 2 year grades, your third and second, your clerkship grades, they should at least be high pass or honors. If you have a one or two passes, that's fine, especially if it's in, long as it's not in your pathology rotation, then I think it's okay. I say this because when I was applying, I felt like I was a very average applicant. I had like my step scores 1 and 2 was like low 350s, and the second one was like, sorry, low 330s. No, what is it? High, sorry, it was high 330s, nearing 340, and then the step 2 score was, in the high 40s, nearing 250, but, honestly, those are not impressive scores at all. And I, other than having done 2.5 months of pathology under my belt, I did not do any research while I was in medical school. I participated in some interest groups and got, leadership, not even leadership. I was the treasury because that's what I'm good at. um, and then, yeah, so I personally thought I had a really average application, especially once I got to University of Chicago and I talked to my peers and, found out about what their application was like. I was like, oh my God, how do I even get into this program? And I think the reason I got into the program was because I did an away rotation. And I think the residents and attendings liked me. Okay. Anyways, um, current third year in medical school in Mexico. Um, oh, well, yeah. I'm glad you like the 101 series. I fell off the wagon of making them, but I just released part one of my colon polyps one, and I'm gonna do the second part soon. And then my plan is to do like some benign IBD colon and of course some cancer, and then I'll think of something. Maybe I'll, instead of the 101, I'll go into more detail into the basic stuff, so on and so forth. Oh my God, every time I scroll it like jumps. Do you write notes on every entity you encounter in residency or just become familiar with practice and exposure? Okay. I took notes on when I had lectures. I took notes. I took like brief 3-word notes when I'm signing out with attendings. And I took notes when I was trying to read a textbook. And in the end, I never revisited any of those notes. And some of the times I like threw them away by accident. So no, I actually did not take notes. But if that's how you learn, is by taking notes and reviewing those notes and then trying to incorporate into the next day sign out, then that's go for you. If you are like me taking notes and I'd never go back to my notes, then it's kind of not helpful. What I did instead was if something cool came up in discussion or something I didn't know in discussion, the minute I sat back on my desk, instead of writing the reports and sending it to the attendings, I do like I spend 5-10 minutes just reading up on it. And that kind of helped me incorporate it as well. Uh, what do you like about UFC? Oh, hold on. So UFC, so I'm biased on why I chose UFC as my number one program because my husband, who is in anesthesia, who is 1 year ahead of me, he got matched to University of Chicago for residency. And so, like I said, I honestly didn't think my score was going to do it for me because I thought my score was very average. But when I got there, I actually really enjoyed my interactions with all the residents. There were some residents who are so helpful. They just saw me sitting there, like flipping through a book, and they're like, "No, don't do that. Here, let's sit down. I'll show you some slides." And I just felt like there was a lot of, very friendly, very helpful people. And I really, really like how the interactions between the residents to with their co-residents. I liked how the attendings teach the residents and how they never really blow off a question if you have it. And I love it that they never like blow off my questions as the med student asking them. So and all of that, I thought, oh, of course, a lot of famous names, and of course, Dr. Satar being there was also kind of like ooh, but it's he's not quite famous in the pathology world. He's very famous in the med student world. Um, but I really liked how the environment was there, and then I really liked how high volume it was there. That way, I it's kinda like, do you want to build a strong foundation at the very beginning, or do you want to have an easy life and then work harder to build a strong foundation in some specialty you want as a fellow? So I knew the University of Chicago residents, they worked hard, but they all learned a ton. And all the people who go off to fellowships all go to very famous fellowships, or they are very smart. So that's why UFC was for me. It was one close. It's the same program where my husband is at, so I didn't have to travel long distance and so on and so forth. But when I got there, I really liked the program. If I was to rank it without the University of Chicago bias, I think I would have done University of Michigan first, then UFC, and then Northwestern. Out of all the places I interviewed, well, and then I really liked Iowa. University of Iowa, that was a really super friendly, super nice community, but I honestly don't think I could live in, you know, middle of nowhere, Iowa. Um, what did you look for in a residency program? So I guess I already mentioned a little bit about what I look for. One is I want to make sure the residents were nice people, because if the current residents, while you rotated or interview with were not nice people and they look down on you, then they're going to be your senior residents when you start up, and that's going to be miserable. And misery propagates misery. So maybe by the time you're a senior resident, you'll start treating your underlings miserable too. And I really like, having attendings who aren't snobby about being an attending, and they always, make sure to teach when you're signing out with them, instead of like, okay, 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 guys, this is that, type it up the report and send to me. And then you're out there in like half an hour or an hour. Um, and of course, when I picked the place, I wanted to go to a place that's not kind of in the middle of nowhere. I'm I'm Chinese. I enjoy Chinese food. I enjoy Asian food, and I'm not going to get good Asian food like Korean, Viet, or whatever in middle of nowhere Midwest. So yeah, that's kind of it's like the way I choose the program was really superficial. I didn't really choose it based on the prestige of a program, because like for example, I canceled all of my New York City interviews because I was like, oh, I can't go on those many. I like whatever. I don't care about Columbia, even if you send me an invite. And then yeah. And then so yeah, for me, it's like the things that will make me happy as I live there. And of course, if the work environment's nice, that's a plus. I didn't pick a place because it was famous or it's full of famous attendings or it's well known institution where you could just like, ooh, I went to this place. So yeah, that's why I picked UFC for most reasons other than the fame, the program, the whatever. Um, does the size of the residency program correlate with the level of one-to-one mentorship you get? Yes. So smaller programs are because the hospital doesn't have enough volume to teach that many programs. So for a program to ask for more residency spots, they need to prove need. So that means they have to prove our hospital, our pathology department sees this many specimens, and we need this many residents. And of course, they won't let you get too many because then the resident will have horrible training, or that's actually the tough part. Getting more to add it to your residency is really hard because you have to prove we desperately need more spots. So in terms of that, it's correlated based on number of residents, correlated based on the size of the volume. And then in terms of one-on-one mentorship, it also kind of correlates to that because uh, when a place is high volume, they also need more attendings. And when there's more attendings, there's more attendings to go around to be paired one-on-one with a resident. So it all kind of correlates. The only thing I would warn is like those small 2, 3 people a year kind of programs. It's gonna be low volume. It's the attendings there may be so busy that they don't have time to really teach you or something. I feel like if you went to a medium to high volume place, then I think that would get you everything you want out of mentorship, out of learning, and on job experience. Okay. Do you think molecular pathology is going to replace histology, morphology? Ooh, no. um, at least not in the perceivable future, because um, next gen sequencing it's still expensive. It's still like thousands of dollars just to run one, and a lot of places don't have a molecular lab. You'll see that in the major academic institutions they have a molecular lab, but it takes a lot of money to get a molecular lab running and started. And most private practice probably won't be able to do it because they need to sink at least 1 or 2 years into that's going to be a money sink for 1 or 2 years before it starts actually churning back money, and it might be even longer before they make a profit off of it. So just because of the cost and the logistics, I don't think it's going to replace histology at all. What it might replace is some like IHCs, because for now, like especially the tougher, less well differentiated things, it's the IHCs because it's like so poorly differentiated. The IHCs are not going to pick up the what you expect it to pick up if that tumor was the well differentiated counterpart. So then you just send it to molecular. You could just skip all the testing altogether. So that what is where I see increased use is to make diagnosis for cancers that have really poor morphology based on like a rudimentary staining of cell of origin, and you can't decide, and that's probably it, instead of doing a 40-50 IHC panel to try to work it up and then send it for molecular anyway after that. In terms of replacing histology, hell's to the no, because pathology isn't just about the diagnosis of cancer. There's diagnosis of tons of benign things like chronic like endometriosis, placentas, fetals, stuff like all of the reflux, the gastritis, the whatever. No molecular testing of a piece of tissue is going to give you that, and it's way too expensive to do that versus a couple $100 to turn out you have H. pylori gastritis. So no, it's molecular. It's going to be a helpful tool. It's not going to replace anything I do at all. Um, And then what I think in the future is molecular pathology is gonna be so well streamlined that we're no longer gonna need a fellowship in molecular pathology anymore. It's just like the same thing back when IHCs first came out, it was its own fellowship. If you didn't have like a fellowship in IHCs, then technically you're not qualified to read an IHC. Now, like anyone can read an IHC because it's just so well established and well tested and all of that. So that's how I think molecular is going to happen in, say, 10, 20 years, when it's more like streamlined and everything. It's easier just for a practicing pathologist like me. It's like, oh, well, this cancer looks kind of funky. Just send it to molecular. The mutations come back, and I can then report the thing. Be like, oh, this and this mutation or amplification or whatever was detected. So this cancer is blah. Instead of sending it to a molecular pathologist, fellowship trained person to just read it and do the interpretation. I think in the future it's going to be like IHCs, and I myself can sign them out. Okay. Pathology. Oh wait, I feel like I skipped. I skipped a lot of things. Okay. Does pathology lead itself to more lawsuits given the slide specimens are stored for extended? Um, no, not really. So legally, we have to keep the tissue, the blocks and the slides for 10 years. After that, it could all be discarded. And it has not any more possible lawsuits than, say, someone writing into a medical record, because with medical records you could go back now like 15 years or more, so that's going to stay in your record forever, whereas your pathology stuff, after like 10, 15 years, they come back and be like, I think you diagnosed that wrong, my life has been miserable. We're like, "Uh, we don't have it." So yeah. But in terms of academic centers, we keep everything. We keep all the blocks, all the slides ever, because you never know when it's going to be important to do research, because an entity that wasn't known, say, 15, 20 years ago is now known now. And then you want to do testing to write a paper about this entity, that's where you get your source material. Yeah. And in terms of lawsuits, honestly, I most of the time, if a pathologist is getting sued, it is being sued in conjunction with the surgeon, because even if a pathology writes this report, right, and the surgeon just followed it blindly, then that's on the surgeon in the end, because he cut the patient. So, for example, uh, like something that doesn't look malignant came to a pathologist, and for some reason they thought it was malignant, and tell the surgeon, he was like, okay, yeah, I guess it's malignant. Now I'm going to cut it out now. Then I feel like at that point the surgeon has obligation, because he was like, they should have at least a clinical feel of what is malignant and what is not malignant, because that's also part of their jobs. And then of course the pathologist is going to get sued along with it, because you said there's cancer and so on and so forth. And hopefully the times when that does happen is when you have the really atypical things that borderline benign and malignant, and usually um, that will go to court. The pathology report and the slides and the blocks will get sent to another pathologist who is on the defendant's side, who will review it. And if they say, like, without hesitation, that this is a tough decision to make, then it is what it is. But of course, if you completely missed a signaling cancer on a stomach, and this person, later has horrible disseminated diffuse signaling cell carcinoma, then it might not favor so much for you. So, yeah, in terms of lawsuits, it's always good to have liability insurance. For big university programs, if I personally get sued, it's not just me. It's going to be the defendant versus the university plus me. So that's why it's good to be in a big academic institution that can cover everyone in their liabilities. So the other thing is, when you go to private practice, and some of them make 500, $600,000 a year, those are probably not covering liability or health insurance or retirement or whatever. Those are probably places that pay out that raw amount of money, and then you have to use that money and buy all of these things yourself. So yeah, that's about getting lawsuits and so on and so forth. Um, whoops. How? Uh, sorry, there's so many questions. How closely would you say pathologists work with other lab professionals? So it really depends. Me as AP pathologist, I work very closely with the PAs because they are the person other than the residents who will be grossing most of the complex specimens. Of course, I'll be working with the techs. If whatever the little biopsies they work with, if we have feedback for them. And the other time is on frozens. So on when you're doing frozens, you either have a PA or a tech help you, and that's when you have interactions with your histotechs or something like that. Yeah, I feel like it's getting always good to know your gross room staff, because when you ask for something and it might be a little more labor intensive, they'll be like, we are on good terms. Oh, it's okay. I'll just do that for you as a favor. Whereas everyone thinks you're that evil person, then they'd be like, no, we don't do that. And I'm not going to make an exception for you kind of thing. And the same thing, I think a lot of cytologists, they really rely on their cytotechs and so on and so forth. So getting to know the support staff is really important as a pathologist. And if you're not making an effort to do that, then I don't know, things might not end up so well for you when you need help. As an attending, what is some advice you wish your senior have told you? So anything and everything I posted in my channel are things I wish someone told me. That is how I got my channel, like the video ideas. It's like, I just recently learned about this. I wish I knew about it. So let me make a video for other people who wanted to know this material before it was time to do something. Um, yeah, so everything, anything. I wish there was someone who would lay what the whole residency is going to be like throughout the 4 years. I wish there was someone who tell me like, like this is the timeline for this is the timeline for that, versus like, when I was in my fourth year, I knew I had to take and sit for the boards, and I knew you had to submit the application, and no one in my department, not even like I don't know, our like residency secretary or anyone was like, "Hey, by the way, it's December. You need to make sure your application it was in." It was like mid-December, and I was panicking because two of my other coworkers were talking about that they already submitted, and I was like, "Wait, why are you doing this early?" It's like, the submission is like deadline is January, so you need to do it now." And I was like, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, always something I learn as I go. Wish I knew about it earlier. PGY1, interest in GI fellowship. What would you advise? You should um, try to do as many GI like sign out sessions as you possibly can while you're in your first 2 years, because most of the time when you apply for fellowship, the fellowship directors will just look and be like, "Oh, so I see you've done this many weeks of surge path or whatever." Then the follow-up question would be like, "How many weeks of that is done for GI?" And if you say, "Oh, I only done 3 weeks of GI," they'll be like, "Uh-huh." That kind of thing. And that might not play well as, but if you're like, "Oh yeah, I've done like 6 weeks or something," and then they're like, "Okay, yeah," and then you're like, "Oh, I try to as much as I can to get more GI rotations while doing search path and so on." So that looks good. And of course, doing research projects with a GI mentor is also good. And of course, getting GI all getting just GI, like getting GI attendings to write your letter, especially if they're like a big name in the GI world, that will help. If not, if they're a big name, if they're like not a big name, but they're a GI attending and they write you this beautiful letter saying you are one of the best residents they've ever taught and you learned so well, and and you're the best, whatever, that letter was, carry you too, because as fellowship directors, they need to realize that you're only halfway through your residency, and if you don't know that much about GI yet, that's not like means that you won't know it by the time you show up at their doors. Um, let's see. I'm interested in pathology, but struggle with the idea of doing autopsies. So autopsies is a requirement for residency because you need to do the number has been decreased due to COVID, which I guess that's fine. But the number you're required to do by the time you apply to sit down for boards, which is basically by December, January, you have to say, I have completed uh, 30 autopsies. And it has to be like adult and a mix of infant and so on. If it was 30 adult autopsies, then that's fine. There's a limit on how many infant autopsies, like not like when I say infant, like the fetuses, the like how many fetus autopsies you do will count. But you need to do 30, and you can share them with another resident. So two of you can claim the same autopsy case at the same time. And there's going to be help. There's going to be a PA, or there's going to be a PA or a histotech that is trained to be the autopsy person. They will help you with the body. They will help you doing the Y excision, pulling out the rib cage, and removing the tissue on block, and so on and so forth. So if you go to a program that is like have a really good autopsy thing, they have good staffing, you may not have to deal too much with the cadaver itself. You might spend most of your time working with the tissue block instead, which will be no different than grossing something. I had a co-resident when I was on autopsy. She absolutely hated the part next with the cadaver and removing parts and doing the external examination. So what she ended up doing was sitting back, and it was me and our autopsy tech, and we did everything. And I'll just be passing organs to her, and she'll go to the other table and then do the dissections, and then submit the cassettes as needed. And by the time we're like pulled all the organs and the brain and whatever out from the body, we were basically done on our side. So we kind of leave when the histotech leave, because that was a very efficient way. So if you went to a place that's not well staffed, then hopefully you could be paired with a person who have no problem doing it, and you can ask like, hey, I wouldn't mind not doing much of this. I will help. I'll do more of the tissue block or running of the bowel or whatever. So there's some go-aways about it, but if you are like absolutely queasy at the sight of a dead body or blood or anything, it might not be for you. That said, I faint at the sight of blood. And it was really bad before I started med school, but I go through med school, and I've started to be like okay with it. And then when I started autopsy, it's like I think the very first time I was like, oh man, this is a little bit much. But then when you start grossing things and doing other stuff that you already done by the time you get to autopsy, it's like desensitized, I think. So hopefully that happens to you, because if that's the only thing preventing you from going to a pathology residency, if I would say, unless you're like absolutely I cannot religiously or whatever see a dead person, then you can't get through a residency, unfortunately. Um I'm struggling. Okay. Pathology from Thailand. Oh, wow. Thank you for joining. I don't, it must be super, I don't know, first thing in the morning or late night for you. Um, and no, I am not going to use cab this year, because I'm not very research heavy. My job title is clinical assistant professor, so most of my time is dedicated to teaching and doing clinical service, and I get a 10% time to do research. And when I do research, I don't want to do like my own research. I kind of tag along to someone else's research, like here I'll contribute a little bit, here I'll contribute a little there, just put my name on the paper. So I don't anticipate me going to use cab very often. And I know, I guess people, it have been cool to meet you guys at use cab, because I'm sure a lot of people here will probably end up going to use CAP, but maybe next year, who knows? Second year med student, what do you recommend for Pathoma or Pathoma? Gosh, don't read Robbins. Just ignore Robbins. I never read Robbins. Just do Pathoma and you'll be fine. Dr. Satar, he is like a genius at teaching the basic necessities to going through the pathology portion of med school. So no, forget Robbins. I don't care who tells you to read Robbins, don't read Robbins. I, I'm very biased. I hate textbooks. If you're a textbook person, then read Robbins. The baby Robbins will help out, but I think Pathoma and your clinical lectures are all you need, and you don't need anything else. Maybe like some, I don't know, uh, Picmonic or something if you're like a visual learner. That way you could learn mnemonics to help you memorize things better. Med student in pathology, interest in pathology, how hard would you say the material we have to learn residency is coming? So it's going to be whatever you learn in medical, whatever you learn in high school, college, medical school, just forget that. That's practically useless for you in residency. I mean, the only knowledge that's really useful is where the organs are located and what the relationship of the organs are inside the human body. Other than that, the slides and stuff that they teach you in the pathology portion of your medical school, it's very basic, and some of the time it's so basic and it's limited to the clinical correlation that it doesn't even at all do justice for even the most basic things about pathology. Like if I was to explain H. pylori, I can't even do a full justice explaining H. pylori because that will take me 10-15 minutes to just do. And no lecturer has 10-15 minutes to do H. pylori. If I was going to give a lecture on the stomach, I get 50 minutes to give my lecture, and things just get cut out and cut out and cut out. And I hate it, but that's what medical school requires. That said, it's really 0 to 100 and whatever, but there's going to be some kind of gradation expectation because everyone knows when you come from medical school, unless you've done a lot of pathology rotations, you kind of have like no idea what's happening. So it will start slow and then it will progress. Did you live in Hyde Park? Yes, I lived in Hyde Park. I lived on 53rd Street. And oh my God, I forgot what that intersection was, but it's the intersection that's basically, if I go straight down, it's the street in between the university and the hospital. Yeah, I lived in Hyde Park. I took the bus system when I can, and I walked when I can't catch a bus. I think Hyde Park is nice, and Hyde Park is getting nice stuff. They're like getting new cafes and whatever opening when I was leaving. So I imagine Hyde Park now might be even better than when I left it. What did you like about Northwestern? Northwestern, the only reason I liked it was because it was in the city. It is located in one of the nicest parts of the city, and you'll hop down. You could, like, within like a 2-3 mile radius, you'll have access to so many restaurants. You'll have access to the public transportation, which Hyde Park does not really have much of. And yeah, and I mean, Northwestern, it was like a standard program that was a standard program. Like, there's nothing striking about it other than the location and so on and so forth. I mean, the people are nice, the attendings were nice, the program director was nice, and so on and so forth. But, other than location in a major city, um, I don't remember anything special about it from my interviews now, so I guess that says nothing really stood out to me. Um, how did Northwestern compare to University of Chicago? In terms of ease, Northwestern residents have it better than University of Chicago residents because I don't know, they're just more protected, or Northwestern, I don't know, don't have as much specimen. I have no idea to compare the raw numbers, but it seems like their residents seem to like go home earlier and come in later than us at University of Chicago, and then we always like, you know, be like, "Oh man, that's so posh. I can't wait. I can't believe it. It's so posh over there." The same thing at like University Chicago North Shore, which is in Evanston. So technically, yes, they're called University of Chicago, but their residency program is completely separate from the University of Chicago program, and they are like 9 to 5 every day. That's literally what the residents told me when I interviewed there. They're like, "Yeah, I come here around 8:30 ish, and then I leave, and everyone leaves by 5 because and I was like, oh great, if you leave so early, what do you do? Do you guys get together, like go to a pub? And they're like, no, we go home to our families. And I was like, no way, I can't come here. Yeah. Any programs to avoid? Honestly, I'm biased. The only program I would say I would avoid is Wash U because I've seen how the first year residents, they all came to like a good chunk of them all came to talk with us, and then after the dinner they all went back to gross, and I was like, what the hell, no, this is too much. And I know that university that Wash U, they are very resident dependent. The residents do a lot of work to make the department work, and because I think they pride in that, and so on and so forth. If you go to a program and you interview and they say, yeah, without the residents we will literally die, versus we really do appreciate the residents, and we really have incorporated the residents grossing and education into our thing so that it's balanced, but they, of course, without them we'll struggle, and so on and so forth. But if you go to a place where you're spending a whole day grossing, or they're like, yeah, the grocery room has tons of residents in it at all times, then I personally would not say that's a good program. When do you residency AP and CP alone? Why do so AP and CP are so different that if you did like 2 years in AP and then you move on to CP, other than the stuff that correlates, like heme path, other than heme path, which is technically qualifies as CP world, nothing else translates. You could be the most like impressive diagnostician using like an H&E slide, and you go to micro, it doesn't mean anything because you don't know all the microorganisms, you don't know how to test for them, you don't know what they look like, and so on and so forth. So it's completely two separate worlds. Like blood bank, it doesn't matter how good you are with the microscope, it does not help you with blood bank. If you didn't do that at all, if you actually come from internal medicine, you might actually do better in blood bank than say someone from pathology doing blood bank. So that's why if you have absolutely no interest in one half and you don't want to apply it, then do the half that you like. The only reason people combine it is because they actually truly have love for both fields, which is honestly, I think it's kind of on the rare side. No one truly have love for both sides of them, other than say like, oh, I love heme path, and I love something else here, and then that's the connection. But like heme path is basically sort of like something in AP, so I don't count the lymph nodes, the marrows, or whatever CP. The CP part of heme path is, when they actually do with the blood stuff, like the blood testing, I don't know, whatever, platelet testing or so on and so forth, the CBCs, like I couldn't care less for that stuff, but that's also part of heme path. Yeah, so I know there's a lot of people, like, for example, they're PhD students, they have a really high interest in research, so they're just going to CP and screw AP. And if I was gutsy enough to do it, I would have gone to AP and just left out CP altogether, and I would have been finished earlier and I can make money faster. So those are the reasons to combine or to separate. What kind of teaching opportunities can you get in residency? So in terms of teaching, as a junior resident, the teaching is basically you could teach medical school students, and you probably saw residents coming to demonstrate like organ labs or whatever. So that's one way to teach. And once you become a senior resident, you can now then officially teach the junior residents. You could teach them how to look at slides and what things are, you help them with the preview, or you could help teach them grows. And then of course, now you still can teach medical students, whatever, in the labs. Unfortunately, I don't really foresee residents giving lectures for medical students. That's really withheld to the attendings. But if you want to teach, you be more involved in teaching or tutoring, you could always establish your own thing. But through the department, most of the time, it's probably going to be involved in teaching the wet lab of pathology, or I don't know, maybe helping out with the cadaver lab in first year or second year, whatever that is. Um, Currently spend teaching. Oh my god, I spend a lot of time teaching every day. Like I said, it's part of my job title. Um, I am a clinical educator line. So the whole point of my role is to be doing clinical work and teaching. So every day, if I have a resident, that is, because we have so many services, not every service get a resident. If I have a resident, I will spend at least an hour and a half, 2 hours signing out with them. And I don't do it because I'm slow. I do it because I always make sure I stop and I teach, or I stop and be like, do you know what this is? Or like, do you have any questions for this for me? And I will go like on a tangent and explain something that's completely separate from whatever the patient has, and so on and so forth. And I don't care if I spend 3 hours doing sign out. It just means I spend more time teaching. If I was by myself and doing the quick previewing and triaging of cases, I could do it much faster. I probably could do it like 1 hour, and then yeah, whatever, and spend the rest of my day, or I just sit there and slowly look at my day and then I sign out. Other teaching I do is I am the GI pathologist coordinator for the GI segment of the medical school lectures. And I basically rewrote all of the GI lectures, because when I was handed them from the previous uh, attending lectures, I was like, this is really not what med students needed. They all wrote many basic lectures that would be great for PGY1 pathology residents. So I had to do a lot of editing on that, and then I personally took charge of giving two of the lectures, the two that I changed the most. And then so I get to do med school teaching, and then um, I'm I'm actually going back to University of Chicago in sometime later this month, and I'm giving an unknown session. That counts as teaching, right? So you could find all sorts of way of teaching as an academic attending, and the expectation of you is you're there to teach the residents, because that's what they're here to learn. Is they're doing the job, running the services, but at the same time they're learning by what's that called, apprenticeship. So yeah, teaching, for at least for me, is really important. I cannot say the same thing for every academic pathologist. Some of them are more research heavy, and they're just like, okay, you are burdening my day, let's just get this done, and I need to go back to my research stuff. So they're not that attending kind of too. And I feel any program will have those two extremes, and somewhere meeting in the middle. Cool. What do you believe the field of pathology is moving towards? Um, I don't know. Since pathology was invented back in, I don't know what, the 18 whatever, it hasn't really changed that much. The whole idea was to look at tissue on the cellular level and make diagnoses that is important to, say, the person, or important for research or whatever. Pathology, in terms of its core, has not changed at all. The only thing that's changed is like the complexity of the cases, new techniques we've added, like special staining, or like and then we've added like IHCs. Now we do molecular, and so on and so forth. But the core pathology remains the same thing, and it as it evolves, I think that core of what pathology is meant to do will remain the same, but all the other secondary things that gets added on will evolve as technology evolves, and as other diseases are discovered, and so on. Oh my god, stop scrolling so fast. Would you recommend getting a how would you recommend getting good at histology? Um, Try to sit on as many sign outs as you can. Um, Another good way is grab a bunch of slides that has already been signed out and just look through them and make your diagnosis and then look at what the attending made, and that way you're also learning that way. You could do like question books, but it's the question books, the pictures on question books are like very like focused onto one thing. So it's not like you're actually learning about an entity as a whole like that. Other ways to get good at histology is looking at videos on YouTube. Like, Jared Gardner, he does these amazing videos for soft tissue and skin. And he sometimes have guest pathologists doing like, I don't know, heme and stuff like that. That's a really good way to learn histology. Of course, I have my 101 series if you want to learn some basic histology. Or there's like YouTube channels for breast, there's YouTube channels for like, I don't know, whatever. I'm sure someone somewhere has posted a YouTube channel for something. It might be not conclusive, but it's out there. Just have to search for it. But you really cannot do any better than learning as sitting at something and looking at it and trying to figure out what's going on. If you have to Google it, if you have to use expert path, if you have to ask someone else, whatever it is, the more time you spend staring at slides, the better you get at histology. Is there such a thing as typical pathology research, and what will it look like? So the majority of pathology research is going to be clinical research. It's going to be like, I want to see blank, like I make this blank hypotheses and I'm going to look at these or test these specimens to confirm or basically refute my own like theory, and that's what it is. So like stuff has been like, oh, I think this entity um stains really good for this IHC, so you'll just pull all the entities of that and then you stain it in IHCs and be like, yeah, look, they have this special staining pattern, and that's a research paper. Of course there's like the basic science research paper, but I don't know too much about that. Like molecular papers about some disease. I don't know what that is. Sorry. But yeah, it's the typical any like hospital research is the same thing. The clinical research, they start with a hypothesis and they do things to test it, and then they'll say, this is my hypothesis was correct or my hypothesis is wrong. And the other thing you could do is because just because one person published a paper on this thing, um, there needs to be more papers to confirm such a thing. So like if you saw someone recently publish this entity and all the things, then and your institution has a lot of that entity, it's a good to start to repeat that test on your home base and then maybe come up with a new idea or something and then submit that as a paper and be like, yes, we confirmed this person's thing and we believe that this is a really useful tool, and we also found something else out. So that's research from pathology. In AP pathology, CP pathology, I don't know what that research is about. What did you do during the weeks before match day? Oh, I don't know. I just carried on as I carried on. I think I don't remember what rotation I was on. I was doing some clerkship rotation. Um, I, just whatever. If when I'm home, I don't know. I if I had time, I baked, or I hang out with my roommates or something. Yeah. I mean, it was a huge relief on that Monday of match day to receive a letter saying I've matched. So at least the very least, I don't have to do the stressful thing of the scramble. But of course, the major relief is when you finally get that letter and being like, oh my God, I know where I'm going, kind of thing. Whatever you do to distract yourself normally, that's probably what you should be doing. How's your work-life balance as a fellow? What do you think is it like? So work-life balance, I would have to say I personally, my work hours as a fellow was greater than my work hours as a resident and was better than my work life as a attending. I think now that I am attending, my work hours are slightly better than what I was. like it's like the fellowship stuff, but then on certain days I have to stay long because cases are complicated or cases came out late. Then I would like pull residency hours, one day a week or one day every 2 weeks or something like that. But overall, I feel like I work on average 50-ish hours a week, um, plus or minus some stuff. Yeah. I think work-life balance is great. On the weekends, I try to not to do work and I just go out. Like for example, this earlier today, it was really cold and rainy here in California. So my husband and we went out to have fun. And then since we moved to our new place, as now my background's different, we were still moving things around, putting artwork on, and so on and so forth. Whatever you want to do after work, that's your time. You could decide how you want to do. And I mean, of course, it depends on the institution you work for. Stanford is super relaxed and they want you to build as much of a work life balance as you can. But there are some places that probably will work you to the bone and maybe don't go to that kind of thing. Um, um, Upcoming OMS. Okay. What advice do you have being successful? I kind of covered this already in the earlier to be successful for a path elective rotation is just show interest and constantly participating in sign out and try your best not to be doing sitting around doing nothing. So busy yourself somehow would be my advice. And you could rewatch this. I talked about it a lot at the beginning of the video. Any general tips for couple matching? Oh, I really don't have much tips for couples matching. Um, the most you and your partner can do is to make sure that you two are both very, very competitive applicants. That will significantly raise your chances of doing a successful couples match. And the other thing is, if there was any influence at all, you could tell the program director, hey, I really like this program. And then is it possible at all for you to like put in a word for this to my spouses program director and like because if they whatever it's a mind game. That's yeah. One of my junior residents, she came to U of C, and her boyfriend slash husband was at Michigan, and that's just how they couples match, and that's unfortunate. But couples matching is sometimes is really successful. Like one partner brings up the other partner, or it could be disastrous because one partner is super good and the other partner is not as qualified, and that might drag the really good partner down if they really want to match that way. So I there's really not much good tips for it. You just have to be like really both competitive, both competitive applicants. Then I feel like your chances are better. Um, Start my first year and then how soon would expect this first year. Oh, well, if you start first year of AP, when you first get there, no one on your first day getting there, no one's going to expect you to know much of anything. At the very least, I think before you start your residency is to look up examples of what normal histology looks like. So, find out what a normal kidney looks like, find out what a normal lung looks like, whatever normal tissue, you should at the very least look that up prior coming to, your pathology residency. And everything there is just working from the ground up. Thoughts about DCLS? Uh, I don't ductal carcinoma is this I don't know what the abbreviation, sorry. I'm happy you read my message. Aw. And do you oh, yeah, that's great. Can you tell me what the difference between medical examiner and pathologist? Okay, medical examiner is completely different from a pathologist. A medical examiner is someone who okay, well, if you're talking about a medical examiner who is MD trained and did a pathology residency, those medical examiners then continue to do a forensics pathology, and then they work as a medical examiner in like the county or some private company as a forensic pathologist, and most of their job is going to be looking at the dead bodies, and they're not going to be pretty dead bodies. They're going to be people who died, and mostly like at least half of them is going to be dying in violent ways, because other than that, why would someone who died of a very like no one who dies in the comfort death is going to want an autopsy like that, and so on and so forth. So basically, as a medical examiner, you spend every day, almost every day, dissecting a body. And then you'll also have to go to court and testify. And then you also, of course, have to sometimes go on scene to the crime scenes and so on and so forth. So it's very different than a pathologist. As a pathologist, right now, as a GI pathologist, I do nothing about autopsy. I don't see dead bodies. I don't touch dead bodies. I don't write any autopsy reports, and I don't train any residents doing it. But even if you were at a place that you have to do medical autopsies, and those are usually in academic centers, you yourself are not doing the autopsies. Usually the residents do the autopsies, and you as the attending will come down and be like, okay, I think you adequately sectioned the tissue and got the right blocks for submission. Or you'd be like, oh, I want more sections of this and this. So that's the difference. And another major difference is you'd be shocked. Forensic pathologists don't do much in terms of looking at tissue blocks. They actually get annoyed if if someone died of some unknown cancer. Like someone died, and then they open the body, and then voila, there's this growth somewhere, and then they're like, damn it, now I have to cut it open and figure out what this growth is, and then submit blocks for cassettes or something like that. But as academic pathologists, all we do is look at the tissue blocks and then correlate with the medical notes or something. Because honestly, like the external exam for a medical autopsy is not the most useful thing. Most of the things inside the body. So yeah, that's the big difference. Um, Okay, wow, it's already 5:18. I'm starting to lose my voice. I will after finishing these current questions, I think I'm just gonna sign off. But thank you everyone who stayed this entire time. What rotation would you recommend to do as a fourth year you after you've done your sub-IR interviews? Um, Even after you've done interviews in fourth year, if you do an away rotation at the program you really want to go to, even though it's not going to show up on your application, the program will know you made the effort to come and do a rotation with them, and that might look good. And also, even if you interviewed and you felt really bad about the interview, like you for some reason that day wasn't your best day, if you come to a rotation, that you get a second chance at proving yourself. So doing more pathology rotations never hurts. It can only help, because the more you get exposure to pathology residency, the more you can start residency running instead of like not knowing anything. um, in terms of medical rotations, I wish I done before. Not really. Maybe if I did a few more surgery rotations, then I would know better about the actual anatomy that the surgeons are describing in their op notes, and how that correlates with me, and so on and so forth. That would be the only thing I could think of that would help me as a pathologist, would be to observe how surgeons get the stuff out. So yeah. Okay. Two questions then. How are you managing medical school loans? Oh my God, medical school loans. I'm not currently managing anything because of uh the COVID loan pause and no interest rate thing. So as long as that's been existent, I haven't done anything. Prior to that, I was paying like $200 a month, and that barely touched my interest. Like that's half of my interest. So even for the year and 2 years and a half or whatever before COVID happened, I was paying a bare minimum because I made bare minimum. And my actually the interest accrued on that, and then so by the time the forbearance came by, my principal and whatever is higher than when I started. So yeah, there's that. And then my end goal, because I already did 5 years of training and now I am currently in academic institution, is to do PSLF. And that's a whole headache in its own because I consolidated. And right now I'm just still like twitching my fingers, be like, oh my God, are they going to count my prior months of not? Or yeah, because then I would lose 5 years worth of months and that's disastrous. But yeah, and then so I'm just banking on PSLF. Last question. Do you think it's useful to do a PhD before pathology residency? Only do a PhD if you want to do a PhD. Only do PhD if you're interested in research. Having the PhD, having an MD PhD, that would make you look a little more competitive because then that shows that having done a PhD, everyone knows doing a PhD is hard work and it's like really dedication for low pay and all of that. So they will know by the default that you did a PhD, that you can stand hardship. But other than that, if you're applying for APCP, other than like knowing that you are a person who's older and wiser and can stand hardship, you don't need a PhD at all. You could just be an MD. And as long as you show the exact, like ability to manage hardship and maturity and all of that, it makes very little difference. All right. And that's it. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I'm going hoarse. So that's it for today. Thank you everyone for coming. And I guess keep spreading the word and I will do this again when I reach 5K subs. So bye, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. All right, bye.